inside Indiana overtime. Yeah, we're never going to do that again. Anyway, I'm wearing the sunglasses because for some reason I can't sit in press boxes when it's really sunny out and like not be really uncomfortable and squint and get a headache. But it is and continues to be an absolutely gorgeous day in Bloomington. We're sitting in the visiting radio booth. The windows are open. I could honestly just probably sit here the rest of the afternoon. I don't know. It's beautiful. The weather's perfect. The temperature's perfect. Everything's perfect. The company is even perfect. And for Indiana, the day was pretty close to it. 42-10, Indiana defeats Bowling Green. And this was, I think, an encouraging win in a lot of different ways for Indiana. Bowling Green, in a simplistic sense, is a team with bowl aspirations of its own. I think that I didn't really look at the pregame picks or experts or anything like that, but this was certainly, I think Indiana was only favored by like 2.5 or 3.5 at home. So, I mean, this was definitely a game that Vegas saw anyway as very losable for Indiana. And they won by 32 points. Their defense did not give up an offensive touchdown for the first time since 2008. The press corps, as of overtime time, could not tell you exactly when the last time they played an FBS opponent, a football bowl subdivision opponent, did not give up an offensive touchdown. It could go back as far as probably about 2000. And it was just, I mean, it was about as comprehensive. And I know it's Bowling Green, but, look, this is kind of what Indiana had to grade itself against after Navy last weekend. There were a lot of questions about this team's, defense, and also maybe just its mentality. How fragile was its psyche after a loss like that, with a lot of sort of old negativity flooding in. I mean, just again, the word to keep coming back to is comprehensive. The offense was largely unstoppable. They punted twice, and they did not punt, I think, after Toth took a roughing the punter penalty, I think, early in the second quarter. And the defense, I mean, they allowed some yards, but you don't give up a single offensive touchdown. That's pretty good.
Yeah, no kidding. And again, Bowling Green is not a throwaway.
Just ridiculous.
Kind of. Well, you can see the reflection of the field, which is kind of cool. But
in that case,
no, you can. But Bowling Green, again, is not a team that you just kind of expect to roll over if you're Indiana. I mean, like you said, a lot of people were split on it. I know the two guys who run the ESPN college football blog were split. One picked Bowling Green, one picked Indiana. And they're a team that scored 41 points last week. Last year, their defense was, in terms of scoring defense, was, I think, 10th in the country. So, I mean, to be able to, go out, score 35 straight points on them, to close the game is really, like you said, a very encouraging sign, and to be able to limit that offense of Bowling Green's, even though it's not historically prolific, it still put up 41 points last week, 34, 35 the week before that, and to limit them to 3 points on offense is something that is really a refreshing sign for IU fans, because after last week, the triple option is really, really. Obviously,
will
as we
they
saw,
ever force a punt again?
It was not encouraging for IU, to say the least, and to get back to a more conventional, more straightforward offense that they're going to see a lot more of, obviously, than the Navy triple option.
It's funny that we're calling a spread offense like a conventional offense.
But it is.
And
it's a conventional offense.
Well, yeah, that's true. And I mean, the reality is that this is, if you look at a lot of the opponents Indiana wants to beat, Jeremy Gray was kind enough to have me on his radio show this morning, and I said that, it's weird to talk about the spread as a conventional offense, but a lot of the teams Indiana is going to want to kind of grade itself against this year do run an offense similar to what they saw today. Right. The big thing for Bowling Green's offense was the balance. They averaged 486 yards a game through their first two, and I think 226 of those on the ground, so they were a team that could run the ball and pass the ball today. They averaged 3.8 yards per carry on 136 yards rushing. That's a little bit skewed because for whatever reason, and I'm not sure why, Bowling Green did not really look like it was trying to establish the run at the beginning of the game. There was a lot of passing with some kind of mixed results because, I mean, at the end of the day, as much as Indiana was tripping over its own feet and tying its shoelaces together at the beginning of the game, Bowling Green still only scored 10 points and didn't find the end zone once on offense. But Indiana was able, Kevin Wilson and I think Dave Clawson to some extent both said this after the game. Indiana was able to take, I think one of Indiana's coaching staff's favorite phrases, off schedule. They were able to take Bowling Green off schedule. They forced Bowling Green to throw a lot of passes, 51 total passes today. And you just got the feeling that there was, even when they were moving the ball, until kind of maybe toward the end of the game when Indiana was playing more to prevent the big play, was kind of trying to keep a lot of stuff in front of it, giving Bowling Green a lot more sort of 4, 5, 6 yard gains rather than trying to, match up one-on-one on the outside and risk giving up, an easy touchdown, potentially turning momentum. You never really got the feeling Bowling Green was in a real rhythm offensively. You never got the feeling they were doing what they wanted to do when they came into this game. And that made a really big difference because, I think this has been proven through the first 2 weeks and now, into week 3. Indiana's offense is for real. It's not, I don't think just kind of like, some of these old Indiana offenses where Indiana had good offense, but against good opponents it would get shut down. Mm-hmm. Bowling Green was, they beat Kent State and Tulsa, 2 teams that each won 11 games a year ago, and they held them to a combined 28 points. So Bowling Green's defense is not that bad, especially for that level, for that sort of mid-American, what do you want to call it, mid-major level, if that's what we want to call it. Bowling Green's defense is pretty good, and they had nothing, for Indiana today.
Yeah, they had no, and a lot of that was Nate Sudfeld in his
who just averaged 8.1 yards per play.
Yeah, which is very good.
Yeah, that's that's a 70-yard,
and that's not a
70-yard touchdown play in
or
touchdown drive in 8 to 9 plays.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we saw Nate Sudfeld in his first career start, kind of at the center of that whole thing. Usually actually always in his career, he's been the guy to come off the bench when IU needs, kind of a change of pace or kind of things aren't working. But today, Wilson decided to go with him, and right off the bat, things seemed to be going well, at least until they got inside the 5, where IU really struggled on the first couple possessions, where they had, really a fairly easy chance to score a couple times and couldn't get it in. But it was kind of interesting to see Trey Roberson come off the bench and see how they used him, why they used him the way they did. They've talked about a lot in the offseason about not telegraphing. They don't want it just to be. They don't want opponents just to really key in on. Okay,
when Roberson's in the game, it's going to be a running play.
They don't want to be able to.
I think that's the bigger one, especially because it kind of seems like Sudfeld's kind of. The job is probably his for now.
Yeah. Where in one of Dave Claus's press conference earlier this week, someone asked him if they had multiple game plans on defense. If they were going to try and do different things depending on which quarterback was in, and he kind of balked to the question, but said, we might do something like that. Kind of. It seemed like he almost hinted at if we see number 5 back there, we know they're probably going to try and run the ball a little bit more. If we see 7 back there, we're probably going to drop back a little bit and look for the pass. And they keyed immediately when Roberson came in. They really keyed in on him. I don't think Roberson had a positive rushing play until his 4th rush of the game, where they really figured out a way to limit him and limit the offense when he was on the field. And a couple of those times were right at the goal line, and then later in the game, Tevin Coleman was able to punch it in from 2 or 3 yards out, where they finally did kind of break through and get that goal line, get that physical push that they really wanted to get, because that was fairly concerning early on, especially with IU's offensive line being kind of dinged up, especially on the right side.
3 replacements.
And where you're kind of thinking, well, this offensive line was supposed to be one of the more reliable units on the team, and there's a little bit of pressure early on, Sudfeld, and
they gave up 3 sacks when Cam Kaufman took a sack, but by that point I think that was your second/third string line. Sudfeld did get sacked 3 times, but at the same time they also racked up 266 yards rushing. As a team.
Goals,
between them, it's, Tevin Coleman and Stephen Houston. I think at one point Kevin Wilson might have called him like Teven or like Teven Coleman or something like that in the postgame. Had 280. What I'm doing the math wrong. No, I think it was actually, when you look at it, the 2 of them together had 284 yards rushing. Some negative plays and things actually brought Indiana's team total down, but those 2 just sprung big run after big run, particularly in the second half. And it was interesting. You talk about, and I think we're going to talk about this some on the site in different stories tonight, but you talked about the goal line plays. There was obviously the block punt that was really almost more like a steal for a touchdown. And then Indiana also had a couple 50-50 calls. The one right before that block punt where it looked like Kofi Hughes had caught the ball, I think, at like the 8 or the 3, one of the two, and it looked like a catch. It was kind of 50-50. They ruled it incomplete. Actually, they ruled it complete. Then someone came in and blew it incomplete, and then they reviewed it and said it was incomplete. This is today was a little bit, and I will admit that I tried to get Kevin Wilson to talk a little bit about this post game, and he didn't seem to want to go there too much. But he's talked a lot about this program and how he doesn't feel like it handles adversity well, and how he feels like just as a whole team, Indiana doesn't really know how to deal with sort of negative situations. And the first half was full of them. And I mean, just it seemed like every break that could go against Indiana, or that Indiana could make go against itself, did. And it never phased this team. Even to start the second half, when they get the onside kick, they executed it perfectly, looked like they had it, and Nick Stoner was ruled out of bounds when he caught it. None of that phased Indiana today. And in fact, really what's interesting is the way that it was almost kind of confidence in Indiana's own ability that got them out of it. Somebody asked Clausen about the rushing yards in particular, because they said that Bowling Green had been good against the run earlier, kind of first two games this year. And his answer kind of spoke to, sort of Indiana's response, which was to just come out and keep plugging through all that adversity on offense and on defense. He talked about how basically Indiana just kept challenging Bowling Green's wide receivers, or Bowling Green's corners, in one-on-one, man-to-man coverage on the outside. Nick Stoner finished with 2 catches for 40 yards. Kofi Hughes had 4 for 34 yards and a touchdown, with that one other one that was maybe a catch, maybe not. Cody Latimer, 6 catches for 137 yards and a touchdown. So together, those guys finished with 12 catches for 211 yards and 2 scores. So Indiana really, whereas last year sometimes when stuff like that happened, you got a feeling that players and coaches both maybe started overthinking things, started pressing a little bit. You just kind of got this feeling like there was too much urgency or anxiety in the way Indiana went about its business when those moments popped up. Today, you could see kind of just this business as usual, even when there were negative moments, even when misfortune happened upon Indiana. Indiana just kept pressing and kind of sticking to its game plan, sticking confidently to what it thought it could do well. And the second half of Clausen's quote about the run game was, we had to change things up in our defense because we couldn't go man to man against those guys. They were beating us. And that opened up the running game for them, because we had to move more guys to the outside, start bracketing guys, and stop committing so much to the run. And, again, that's kind of technical versus philosophical, but it's just that it's this idea that maybe this Indiana offense in particular is good enough to where, and confident enough and experienced enough to where maybe you can overcome some of that adversity that a year ago was such a problem.
Mm-hmm. And where you do have the ability to when they take away the run, you can burn it with the pass, and when they try and take away the pass, you can come at it with the run. I mean, I think that was really something that they tried to key in on, is becoming more multifaceted. Even from the first quarter to the second quarter, I think Sudfeld threw something like 15 passes in the first quarter and then only 6 in the second, where Indiana was able to, or it seemed like there was a concerted effort to establish the run a little bit more after the end of the first quarter, where they were kind of, still kind of feeling each other out. But yeah, I mean, in that second half, especially with the run game, I mean, Stephen Houston had runs of, I think he had a 50-yarder and a 60-yarder. Finished with
50-yarder came in the first half.
That's right. And he finished with 155 yards. I mean, and Tevin Coleman had a 43-yard touchdown run. So there were times when there were just enormous holes and enormous gaps in the Bowling Green defense, where it just looked like maybe someone was out of position, or they just weren't exactly keyed in on that play. But there were a couple times where they were able to burn them on multiple long run plays. I mean, the past couple of years, Indiana's been able to have one really long run, or maybe 2 or something like that. But to be able to consistently run. I think Stephen Houston averaged 12 yards a carry, in large part because of those 2 big runs, but where they were able to pick up large chunks of yardage on the ground, which I don't really remember seeing very much over the past couple of years.
Well, and it's, again, maybe it just kind of speaks to this sort of more theoretical idea that when was the last time you saw Indiana win, all or nearly all of the X's and O's battles within a game? It was that Indiana took Bowling Green's offense off schedule, and at the same time also made Bowling Green's defense adjust away from some of its major strengths. Indiana has been a team. I mean, Indiana in history is pretty good against the MAC. They are either 0-2 or 1-2, depending on how you want to look at UMass, which was kind of like provisional or probationary, whatever you want to call it, coming up from the FCS to the FBS last year. Whether you want to count that win, they'd lost to Ball State twice, obviously, since Kevin Wilson got to Indiana. So it's not like beating MAC teams has been a regular thing for IU in the last couple of years. And Bowling Green really is, I mean, again, I know we're talking about a MAC team, but we're not getting excited over Indiana beating up on Eastern Michigan. I mean, first of all, I would hope we're not getting excited. That's not our job. Second of all, I mean, there are a lot of birds flying around the stadium, and some of them are coming remarkably close to these open windows.
It's better than moths flying and hitting us.
But that's true. That was crazy. But this is a good team. This is a team that you will more likely than not see in a bowl game, Bowling Green. And Indiana beat them pretty comprehensively today. I mean, I hate to keep coming back to that word, but I mean, it was just start to finish. Indiana made more plays. They made better plays. Their execution was better on both sides of the ball. And aside from those early sort of moments where Indiana, again, was just kind of stumbling over its own problems and some of its own miscues, like not converting the goal lines. I mean, if you think about it, convert those two goal line situations and Indiana wins this game 62-10. Yeah. And I know that that's not entirely, scientific or empirical or whatever you want to say, but it is this idea that Indiana won by 32 points today, and you still didn't feel like that was even necessarily their best performance.
In a game where they left a bunch of points on the field,
yeah,
they scored 42.
So, I mean, and as much as anything else, obviously, it's a good response to Navy. There was a lot of kind of that old sort of cynicism or fan base doubt, and you can understand where that comes from. I know that Kevin Wilson and his players probably take some umbrage to it, and I understand that too, but Indiana fans have seen a lot of performances like last week's against Navy where the defense just couldn't get off the field, where the offense just didn't make enough plays, where it was close but not enough against a team that probably should have been beaten. Today was, I think, in a basic way anyway, in every major facet, a great response for Indiana to what happened last week and moving forward to a really big game and potentially a really fun-looking game next weekend against a Missouri team with kind of a similar profile, shaky defense, pretty good offense, coming in, Big Ten versus SEC, 8 o'clock Saturday night. Last question, Alex. What helmets will Indiana wear next week?
I don't know. They might go back to the chrome. After the way they played today, they might go back to the... I thought they were going to break it out.
No, I did too. I thought the chrome stripes were going to come out for the Missouri game.
Me too.
I will go with you. I will follow suit. I think they're going to play chrome again. That is the kind of hard-hitting analysis we bring you at Inside Indiana.
Yes. You waited around 18.
All right, the video's lagging probably because it's way too long.
Yes.
For Alex McCarthy, I'm Zach Osterman. You've been watching Inside Indiana Overtime as always. We'll see you next week.